Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to today's session on deep learning. So, today's session being a practical session will be taken by Jeannie ma'am, and she has shared a file with you. The same I have shared the same in your WhatsApp group as well as in the Google Classroom. So, you can refer that file during the session. Good afternoon, Jeannie ma'am. I have given you the right so that you can start with the session.
Thank you. Am I audible?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. Good afternoon, everyone. Today we'll start with feed-forward neural network. Okay. We'll do today feed-forward neural network, and the basic requirements for that are already covered, like the NumPy library we require, the Pandas library we require, and the Matplotlib library we require. We have already covered that, right? So first of all, we'll import some basic library that we require. We require NumPy library so that we can have arrays, right? We require Pandas library so that we can have a data set in the form of data frame. And we want Matplotlib library so that we can plot any graph to visualize the performance. Right. Next is the data set that we are going to use for feed-forward neural network. We will be predicting based on the numerical data today. So the data is a Chern modeling data set. So I'm going to import the data set in the same way I did that day using Pandas library in the form of a data frame. So we are using a Chern modeling data set. You can see the data set here. It tells us about the information about the customers in a bank, whether they have exited the bank or not. So this information is based from the past 6 months. So based on that information, we have to predict whether the customer has exited the bank or not. So this type of information is available so that the bank can get a feedback on what basis the customers are leaving the bank and they can improve their services, right? So this type of problem is important. So we are going to predict this whether the customer has exited or not using feed-forward neural network. So little about the data set. So you can see the first column here is the row number. Next is customer ID, and third one is a surname. So we know that these column does not add much anything to the information whether the customer has exited the bank or not, right? The person's surname does not give us any information why the person will ever exit the bank or will not exit the bank. So these three columns we do not require, and while processing the data, we'll remove these columns. Next, all other columns are important. First of all is the credit score, that what is the credit score of the particular customer, the geography, to which area does the customer belong to, the gender, whether the person is a male or a female. It can have some importance in the data set also. So we cannot assume that gender does not play any role, whether the customer has exited the bank or not, right? And the age group, to which age the customer belong to. The tenure means like how much time has the customer been with the bank, right? And the balance is like how much average balance does the customer maintain during this period. The number of products is like how many of the products the customer have with the bank. Has he have the credit card or not? Is he an active member or not, right? 1 means he's an active member, 0 means he or she is not an active member. And the last one is the estimated salary. So what is the estimated salary of the customer? So based on all these information, we have to find out whether the customer has exited the bank or not, so that the bank can improve their services in the future, right? or bank can increase the number of customers who are more liable to stay with them. So now the first thing we have to do is we have to divide our data set into X, that is features, and Y, that is label, which we are going to predict. So for that, first of all, we calculate the total number of columns that are present here. So to do that, there is a function len that calculates the length of the columns. How to calculate the columns? We'll give the name of the data set that we have provided here and columns. Columns gives the total columns here and length will calculate the total output, right? So if I run this, yes, you will get that there are 14 total columns here. And out of the 14 columns, we have seen that first 3 columns are not important as the index are from 0. So 0, 1 and 2. These 3 index does not contribute anything. So we'll not take that. And the last column contributes to the labels. So first of all, we'll get our X. So how to get the X values? I already told you, if I want to get the values using an index, I'll use ilog function. So similar to that, I have used the ilog function here. Inside it, I have to give the arguments, that is the indexing we want. So we want all the rows, but some of the columns, right? So for all the rows, we have provided a column here that and comma. So I told you before comma, it is the rows, and after comma, it is the columns. So we want all the rows, so we are not providing anything in front of the or at the back of the column, and in the column side. So I told you that 0, 1 and 2 are not important. So we'll start with indexing 3 up till, so where I will go to the second last one, right? So we'll go till total columns minus 1, right? So, but total column minus 1, we know that the last one is not included, right? So if the total number of columns are 14, this will have an index 13, right? So if we see this, we are taking till 13. No, why? Because the last one is not included. So it will take the values 3 till 12, right? So if I print X, so you will have an X as a data frame that consists of from credit score to estimated salaries. Now I don't want the complete data set. I just want the values out of it, right? So what I will do here, I will take out the values using dot values function. So if I run this again, now you can see it is an array which consists of all the values that we have already seen, right? Similarly, we'll also calculate the y. So y is equal to, similar to the way using ilog function, we'll calculate this. So I want all the rows, so I'm not adding anything here. And I only want the last column. So how will I get the last column? Total cost minus 1, right? And I want the values out of it. So use dot values function. So you can see we have got another array that consists of ones and zero. Ones means the customer has exited the bank and zero means the customer has not exited the bank. So in the data set, you can see there are 2 categorical columns. The one is the geography and the other one is the gender. So first of all, we label and code the gender column. So why are we label and coding the gender column? Because we have only 2 categories, male and female. And this can be done only in the single column. So that's why we are using here label encoding for the gender column. So for label encoding, first of all, we will require a library. So the library is under the sklearn. So from sklearn, now it comes under the pre-processing of the data, right? So sklearn.pre-processing. From here, we want to import what we are doing label encoding. So we want to import label encoder. So label encoder class is like this with L capital and E capital. So if you run this, yes. So we have imported the library here. Now after importing the library, what we'll do, we'll create an instant object of it, right? So I'll create an object LB that will represent the label encoder class. So after we have creating an object, now to which column I want to provide label encoding? To this column, male female column. So which is this column 0, 1, 2. That is on the second indexed column. I want to provide the label encoding. So I take the second column out of it. Now I want all the rows and the second indexed column. So I'll provide label encoding to it. How? I will call the object LB dot. In that we'll call the function fit transform. What fit transform does is it first applies the label encoding to the column which we provide and then fit the data and change it in the original, change it in the variable that we are providing. So, sorry, this is a function, so there will be circular brackets here. So inside it, we'll pass the column for which we want the label encoding. So the second index column will provide here. So if I run this, so you can see now this column has been indexed. Female has been given a value 0 and male has been given a value 1. So it is done automatically. Male can be given a value 0 also, female can be given a value 1 also. So it automatically creates these categories on its own, right? So we are not defining manually that which category should be given what value, right? So this is how we done the label encoding of the gender column. Now, next column, the categorical column, we are left with is the geography column, this one. Now this has more than 2 categories. That is, there are 3 categories, France, Spain and Germany. Now we know that only label encoding will not work here. Why the label encoding will not work? If suppose we apply label encoding, then it will create the categories like 0, 1 and 2 and different importance will be given to each category. But we don't want that. All the countries have equal importance, right? So for that, we do hot encoding of the data. What hot encoding will do is it will add the number of columns to it equal to the number of categories. Like for example, if we have 3 categories, then it will create 3 different columns for us and will remove this column that was originally present. So similar to the label encoding one, here also we need to import the library. So from sklearn dot pre-processing. So it also comes under the pre-processing of the data. So it has same underlying class. So we need to do one hot encoding. So the library is from sklearn.preprocessing import one hot encoder. So we have imported the library. Now for this, we also need another library, that is the column transformer. What this library is for, so that we can drop that particular column and create new categories simultaneously, right? So from sklearn.
Hello.
Hello. Yes.
Yes, ma'am. Yeah, we does not have this data set churn modeling CSV file.
Okay, no problem. We'll share at the end, right? Right now, just learn how to code this. We were supposed to share this at the end of the lab only, right?
Ma'am, will this label encoder will encode only those columns which can be encoded, like 0, 1, or all the columns?
We normally do it for the categorical data only, right? Otherwise, it will not make sense. For example, if the data is numerical data, then it will consider each number as a category, right? But we don't want that.
So,
So
ma'am,
it will,
here you have taken x of column all over to 2. Like,
yes.
what does it mean, ma'am? colon,
It
comma, C.
means that colon, as I told you in the day before yesterday class, the comma here is for that. On the left side of the comma, we have rows. On the right side of the comma, we have columns, right? So we want all the rows, right?
Yes, ma'am.
So that's why we had applied a colon here. Colon alone means that we are taking all the rows. Now in the column side, we are taking only one column. That is the second indexed column.
That means it is transforming only second column. That,
Yes,
that
it
is
is
that
trans.
0, 1
Yes.
column.
Yes. So you can see here output also. Rest all the columns are same. Only this column has been changed, right?
Okay.
Okay. So we were under one hot encoding of the geography column. So for that we need another class. Column transformer. Sorry, here F should come. Yes. Now we have imported these two libraries that are required for one hot encoding of the data. Similar to the way we did label encoding, here we'll create an object of the one hot encoding of the data. Suppose CT, column transformer, is the object we are creating, and we'll call the class column transformer. Here we have to pass some of the arguments to show that we are performing one hot encoding and on which column we are doing that, right? So there will be two arguments here. So first one will be a type of list, and second one I'll tell you. So first of all, in the list, first of all we'll provide like which column we want. So which column we are doing here? Geography column, right? So we'll give the name geography, comma. Now what we want to do here is we want to one hot encode the data. So we'll call that class, that one hot encoder class, comma. Now we have to provide it the index to which I want to provide this one hot encoding to. So you can see here, this one is 0, this one is 1. So it means we want to provide one hot encoding to the first indexed column. So I'll provide 1 here, right? So in this way, you can provide, you can do one hot encoding for any column. You just have to provide the index here. Rest everything will remain the same, and also the name of the column. Now there is one more
Ma'am,
argument.
The list
Yes.
it is taking class column transformer. It is taking
Yes.
a list as an argument, right? So that means we can transform multiple columns at a time.
Yes, we can transform multiple columns also at the same time. So here I have given 1. You can take, you can give here multiple columns also, right? So another argument here is remainder. Written spelling wrong. Right. Remainder is equal to pass through. So what does it do is that it means that apart from the column that we have provided here, it will pass rest of the column as it is and will not do anything to those columns, right? So if I have created an object, now what I have to do is I have to transform the data. So in the similar way, I will do same thing, ct dot fit underscore transform. And we will provide the data set. So if I run this, so you can see here, and one more thing, one hot encoding, what it does it makes all the columns that are one hot encoded to come in the front, right? So first, as we know, there are 3 categories. So first 3 columns will represent the columns that are that are present because of the one hot encoding, right? So we can see here that France has been replaced with 100, Spain has been replaced with 001, Now again France has come, so it means it should be given same value, that is 100. So you can see the value is here same 100, and for Germany you can see the value is 010. So it means it has encoded the geography column into the one column has been transformed into 3 columns that are one hot encoded, right? So this is how you do the one hot encoding of the geography column. Rest all columns are integer values, so we need not to do anything about that, right? If suppose your data set has more than these two categorical columns, so you can do the same operation using that also. So if you have two categories, you can just use label encoding, or if the categories have some importance in the order, like for example, if suppose you are giving a grade A, B, C, D, and E, so we know A has to be given more importance than B. In that case, also you can do label encoding. But if suppose you have more than two categories and all the categories have same importance, we are not ranking them, then in that case you need to do one hot encoding of the data, right? So we'll move on to next. Now we have done the pre-processing of the data, most of the pre-processing of the data. So what we'll do, we'll divide our data set into training part and testing part, so that we can fit our model on the training data and then predict the values on the test data, right? So for that, we'll import the library again from sklearn. Dot model underscore selection import train test split. So we are doing train test split. So the library is named accordingly. So if I run this, so the library has been imported. Now I want to split the data into training part and the testing part. So for that, I need to split in X also and Y also. So we'll pass both X and Y so that the data can be split correspondingly, right? Like for example, if the first instance of X is in the training, then the first instance of Y should also be in the training. So for that, we create X train, that is the X values that will come in the training. Similarly, X test, Y train, and Y test. So we want these 4 things. So for that, we'll call this function train test split, right? In that, we'll pass our original X that we have after reprocessing of the data, the original Y we have, and now we have to provide that what amount of the data we want in the training and what amount of the data we want in the testing. So suppose I am taking 70% of the data in training and 30% of the data in testing. You can take any number like 80-20, 50-50, 70-30, right? 85 and 15, you can take any number, but mostly we use 70-30 ratio. You can try and test these numbers. So what will give you the good results? So we define test size is equal to 0.3. 0.3 means we are giving 30% data to the test size. So by default, 70% of the data will go to the train size, right? So we are also giving some random state here. Random state is just to make sure that, for example, if you want to again get this data that you have, again you want to get the same splitting that you have got here. So that's why we are defining some random state, so that if you get this random state again, so you will get this same splitting that you have got now, right? And one thing more to see here is that this X train, X test, Y train, and Y test should come in this order only, right? So it gives us the answers in this order. So it should be written like this only. You can change the name of the variables, but order should remain same, right? So we have run this. The data has been splitted. To show you that data has been split, we can check the shape of the data. Like what was the original shape of the data? If I run this, you will see that there were 10,000 rows and 12 columns, right, in total. So now if I check the X-train shape and run this, see there are 7,000 rows in the training set and rest 3,000 rows in the test set. So we can take that also, see that also. Right? So we have 3,000 rows in the test set, 7,000 rows in the train set. So it means it has divided our data into 70:30 ratio, right? Similarly, you can see the values of Y-train, shape of Y-train and Y-test also. The next one important thing that we have to do before building our feed-forward neural network is the feature scaling. If you see the original data set here, you can see that there is a large variation in the values of the data. For example, estimated salary is quite large, age is quite small, right? Balance and estimated salary could be around same, but age is very small, tenure is very small. These are just zeros and ones, and number of products are also very small. So it would create a bias in the data. So we need to do feature scaling. For that, we'll apply standard scaler so that it will scale all our data in the same range, right? So that all features could be given same importance. So for that, we'll import library from sklearn. This also comes in the pre-processing part. So from sklearn pre-processing, we'll import standard scaler. So if I run this, written I think spelling wrong. Yes, S should be capital here. Yes, now the library has been imported. Both S should be capital, right? So we'll import standard scaler library. First of all, same, we'll create an object of standard scaler. From this object, we'll call that flip transform function. Now we are supposed to transform the X training data also and Y training data also. So first of all, we'll transform X train data sc.fit transform X train. Similarly, we'll give our Y X test data. Yes, you have got the, we have done the standard scaling of the data. So we have transformed the X training data also and X training data also. Just excuse me for 1 minute, I'll be back. Sorry for the disturbance, just 1 minute. Yes, sorry for the disturbance. So we were here transforming the data. We have transformed X train as well as X test. So if I want to see the data, Now, you can see that all the data has been transformed, whether it was in the form of zeros or ones, or it has high values. All the data has been transformed between -1 to 1, right? Initially, X-train was this, right? So we have explained this. It was having some of the very large values, some of the very small values. So we have transformed all the values into the same range. Similar is the case with X test also, right? Now we have done with the data pre-processing part. We have completed our pre-processing of the data. We are to start with the building feed-forward neural network, right? So any problem in the pre-processing part?
Ma'am, what is the difference between label encoding and one hot encoder?
Sorry, I didn't get you.
Ma'am, what is the difference between label encoding and one hot encoder?
Okay, so what label encoding does it will change the categorical data into like, for example, if I have 5 categories, right? So what it will do is it will create the categories as 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5, right? So when you give this 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, and 5 to the input to the any classifier, so it will give different importance to each category, right? 5 will have a different importance, 1 will have a different importance, right? So label encoding will be useful. For example, if I suppose give you the grades like A, B, C, D, and E are the grades of the students. Now these grades are in the particular order. So in that case, label encoding is good, right? Because it gives different importance to different categories. But for example, if I have different states, so all the states should be given the same importance, right? So we don't know the ranking of anything about the ranking of the states. In that case, we need one hot encoding. So it both are the ways to transform the categorical data, but are used in different contexts, right? Am I clear?
तो मैम हमें इसमें मतलब जेंडर में वन हॉट एनकोडिंग यूज करनी पड़ेगी.
We can use one hot encoding in the gender column also, but it does not make a difference. Why? Because if we have 2 categories, it is 0 and 1. So it will be the same answer if we one hot encode the data. Why? If suppose we one hot encode the data, it will convert into 2 columns, right? Either it will be 1, 0 or 0, 1. So final answer would be, if you see these 2 columns, both will have 0 and 1, right? So both will give us the same value. So even one column will be redundant. That is why one label encoding is better in that case. You got my point?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you.
Okay. Any other doubt?
Excuse me, ma'am.
Yes.
Ma'am, what is the use of fit transform?
So what does fit transform does it? First of all, it will transform the data to the desired thing that we want to do. For example, if we want to hot encode the data, it will transform the given value that we have given in the parenthesis. It will first transform the data, right, and then fit it into the original data. It will transform any type, any function that we are using it to do. It will first transform that data and then fit it into the original data set. Right? Transform into the required type.
Okay, ma'am.
Okay. So if all the doubts are clear, we can start with building feed-forward neural networks. So for that, we'll import some of the libraries. Let me tell you about these libraries also side by side. So first of all, we require Keras library. Keras library has been imported. Now, if in any case, any library is not working on your system, it means that it has not been installed, right? So you can install it using pip install command, or if you are using on Anaconda version, you can use conda install command, right? For example, if Keras is not working for you, you can use pip install Keras command or conda install Keras command. Similar is the case with all the libraries that we have used or will use, right? So one thing more is that before installing Keras library, you need to install TensorFlow in your system, right? TENSOR TensorFlow. Let me tell you. So you can use this command first of all to install the TensorFlow. Then on top of that, you have to install the Keras library, right? So why we need to do that? Keras is an open source software library that provides us a Python interface, especially for deep learning, right? But it works on the top of TensorFlow library. That is, it acts as an interface for to the TensorFlow library, so that we can use all the functionality of TensorFlow in easy way, right? That is why we need TensorFlow before importing Keras. So if you are installing Keras and still it is not working, it means you may not have a TensorFlow in your system. So first of all, always install TensorFlow and then install the Keras. Now from the Keras, what we will do, we'll import the model. So Keras have models with us, different models. So we are going to import the sequential model. So why we need to import the sequential model? Because you have seen the diagram of feed-forward neural network, right? You can consider it as a sequence of layers that are connected to one another. Like for example, first layer is connected to the second layer is connected to the third layer. So it can be considered as a sequence of layers. So that is why we are using sequential model for our feed-forward neural network, right? So it can have another models also. There are graphs also. There are some practical models also. So the feed-forward neural network comes under the sequential category. And what more we need is, after we have our model, we need layers, right? So from Keras, we'll also import layers. And the layer that we are going to work today is a dense layer. So you know what dense layer is? That is, every single neuron is connected to every other single neuron, right? So if there is one neuron in the input layer and suppose two neurons are there in the hidden layer, so this first neuron is connected to both the neurons in the hidden layer. And similarly, you can go ahead, right? So from this layer, we are importing what type of layer? Dense layer, right? These three are the things we require, right? So these are the libraries that we require. If you get error in these libraries, you may need to install it at the backend. You can use pip install version as well as the conda install version, depending upon what type of software you are using. So I have imported all the libraries that are required. Next is we have to, first of all, create a classifier. So I'm creating an object for that. Classifier is equal to, so I told you what type of classifier we are having. We are having a sequential classifier, right? So we are creating a sequential type of classifier. Now we'll add the first hidden layer. So it is important, please listen to this carefully. So what we are going to do is, we have a classifier with us. In that, we are going to add the layer. So the function is add. All the functions are straightforward. With the name, you can guess what it does it. So we are adding a layer. So what type of layer we are going to add? We are going to add a dense layer, right? So these are all the brackets that we have. Now, what type of arguments we want to give? Now we will not create the input layer. Why will not create the input layer? Because it will create the input layer for us by default, right? So here the number of neurons in the input layer will be equal to the number of features that we have. So here you can see that we have 12 features, right? So we will have 12 neurons in the input layer. So here we give the first argument, that is how many neurons we want in our input layer. So it is given by input underscore dim, right? So input underscore dim, it is a name for the argument. So how many inputs we want to give? 12. That is, we want to create 12 neurons in the input layer. Now in the hidden layer, we can add as many number of neurons as we want. The larger number of neurons will increase your computation complexity, and the smaller number of neurons may overfit or underfit the data. right? So we have to try and test what the number of neurons are sufficient. So I'm taking 8 neurons here. You can take anything and you can test the accuracy and check out which gives the better results, right? And now there is another argument, that is kernel initializer. You know, don't need to worry about it. It will give the uniform values to all the weights. So we are using it. This is we are using as it is, right? The one more important thing is we have to provide the activation functions also, right? Activation, ma'am must have discussed activation functions with you. So which type of activation functions we require? Rectified linear unit. We always use rectified linear unit because it gives us the desired outcome, right? So this way we have added our first hidden layer, right? So if I run this, okay, we have an error. There's a spelling mistake. Okay, so we have created our first hidden layer. Now, similarly, we can create a second hidden layer. For that, we will just copy this code, line of the code, and we'll paste here. So what changes we would require? Now we don't require to give the input values to it, right? Because we require only in the first hidden layer. So we have removed that. Now here also you can provide any number of hidden neurons. I'm using same 8 number of neurons. Rest everything will remain the same, right? So it is as easy to add a layer like this. You can directly add it. So if I run this, so I've added another hidden layer. So I am adding only 2 hidden layers. You can add as many number of hidden layers you want. For example, if we are building a very deep neural network, you can add many number of hidden layers to it, right? So if you can check with how many hidden layers your model is working good, right? So I'm adding here 2 hidden layers. You can try different numbers of hidden layers with me. Now, finally, we'll add our output layer, right? So for that, classifier. Okay, we can just copy the code from here only. It is also the same. Now, the difference will be, now in the output layer, how many neurons we want? As we have only 2 outputs, so we can work with only 1 neuron, right? So if we have 1 neuron, it will give us a value either 0 or 1, right? So we'll give units is equal to 1. So if it is a multi-class classification problem, you can change the number of units here, right? And number of units will be changed, kernel initialization will be same, activation function will change here. Why activation function will change? Because we want the answer in the form of 0 and 1, right? ReLU can give answer in any number. So what activation function we require here? Sigmoid activation function. So why we are using sigmoid activation function here? Because it gives us the values in 0 and 1 only, in the range of 0 and 1. So that is why we will be using sigmoid activation function. Rest all will be remaining same. So if I run this, yes. So we have created our model with 1 hidden layer, one input layer, 2 hidden layers, and 1 output layer. So the next thing we are going to do is compile our model. For that, we'll use simple function classifier dot compile. Okay. So inside this, we are supposed to give the different arguments. Now, the first argument is a learning algorithm you wanted to implement, right? So you must have studied about the stochastic gradient descent algorithm, right? It is a learning algorithm that we use. So instead of stochastic gradient descent method, we are using here the optimizer as Adam. So what is it is? It is like a replacement for stochastic gradient descent algorithm. It works better than stochastic gradient descent algorithm. That is, it has background of stochastic gradient, but some improvement has been made to it, right? So what improvement is given to it? In the stochastic gradient descent, the learning rate was same. right? So if you have studied this stochastic gradient algorithm, you know that it takes the same learning rate throughout the learning, right? But the Adam optimizer, what it does, it adjusts the learning rates according to the parameter that it is training, right? So with the different parameters, it adjusts its running rate itself. That is why it gives us better results as compared to simple stochastic gradient descent algorithm. So that's why we are using Adam optimizer here. So there are other types of optimization algorithms also built. You can use any one of them, like there is AdaGrade, there is RMS Prop, and there are many more also. But this works best in most of the cases. So why does it work best? Because it was an improvement on the stochastic gradient descent algorithm. Secondly, it combines the benefits of the other two algorithms that were AdaGrade and RMS Prop. So it was a benefit because it was using both their strengths, right? That is why mostly Adam optimizer works well with all kinds of data set. So mostly it is used, but you can try different also and check which is giving better results for your data, right? So some of the advantages that it had is like, for example, it can handle the sparse gradients also, like where the gradients are mostly zero. It can handle that problem also. It can handle noisy data also. It is very easy to configure and it is very straightforward. It even takes computationally less time as compared to stochastic gradient descent algorithm, and it works well with the large data as well as with the large number of parameters. So based on all these strengths that it had, that is why we are using here the Adam optimizer, right? You can try and test other also, but we are using today here. I will also share with you, just wait. Yes. So here you can see this is a paper on Adam, a method for stochastic optimization. If you want to go into detail that what is the algorithm for it, so how does it work, so what is better, you can refer to this algorithm. So I have provided the link of this to your Jupyter notebook that you have. So you can see this paper if you want more details of this Adam optimizer, right? So we have the optimizer as Adam. And the next thing we want is, so we want a learning algorithm. We got that. Next thing what we want is we want to calculate the loss also, right, at each step. So we'll give the loss. So what type of loss is used? We are using binary cross entropy. So that's also discussed with you what binary cross entropy is. So why we are using this? First of all, it is a classification problem. That is why we are using cross entropy, and it is a binary classification problem. That is why we are using binary cross entropy loss, right? And the third thing and final thing we are going to give is the matrix that is based on which it will evaluate our performance. So we are giving the accuracy here. You can give other matrices also. It has some like already defined matrices also, or you can give some manually defined matrices also depending upon your requirement, right? I'm getting here a accuracy. You can see I am passing here a list, right? So you can give a list of matrices. You can have multiple matrices that you require. For example, if you require with accuracy, you require sensitivity, you require specificity, you can also give that here in the list itself, right? So these are all the things we require for compiling, and we run this. And our model has been compiled. Now we want to see our model, the summary of the model. So for that, what we can do is, there is a function known as summary. Right? So you can see here that we have one dense layer, right? That is the hidden layer. So it will have output shape 8. Why? Because we have 8 hidden neurons in it. Second hidden layer, we also have second hidden layer that also consists of 8 neurons, right? And the final dense layer, that is 1. So you can see the number of trainable parameters here are 185, right? So in this way, we can see our summary of the classifier that we have created. Now we have created our final classifier and we want to fit our classifier, fit our model on the trained data. So for that, what we are doing here is classifier dot fit. Fit function is used, like for example, in the machine learning view, same fit function we are using here. So which type of arguments would it require? It would require X trained data or Y trained data. Right. Now we can give the batch size here. For example, if we want to use a batch processing, right? So what batch processing does is, for example, it will divide your complete data into different batches. For example, if I am using batch size at 10, then it will divide your data into 10 different batches. And then based from each batch, it will give you the results, right? And the last argument that we are to give is the epochs. That is the number of epochs we want to give it to the training. I'm taking 100 epochs. We can take many epochs like 500, 200, or even small number of epochs also. As your network goes deeper, it may require more number of epochs to run, right? So, and one more thing, if I want to suppose intermediate results also, I want to see what intermediate results were. So I will fit this function and will store it in a variable. So what this variable will have is, it will have all the intermediate results that it has calculated, right? So I am saving it under the results. So if you don't want any intermediate values, so you don't need to give it to some variables. You can directly use classify.fit. Like example we have used here, classify.compile. You can in a similar way use classifier.fit also. So if I run this, okay, we have an error here.
Ma'am, X should be capital.
No, it is small only.
Ma'am, we have done feature scaling, so the number of columns are more.
No, the number of columns are 12 only. You can see here. After feature scaling, the number of columns does not increase, right? It remains the same. Don't know what the error it is getting. It was working fine. It is running like, let us see what the output it is giving us. We'll wait for one or
I
two
think ma'am,
minutes.
you need to rerun it. It is not running. If it was running, it should show us a cycle of the
Yes, I know
result.
that. Let's run it again. So
Please,
why it's not? Yes, now it's ready. Let's run this again and see if it is working. So these are all the same thing. I'm just running it. have error here. Well, okay, we can work here or here, but I don't know why it is giving an error. It should be supposed to work fine. I will check that later. So I'll start here. We are getting error here also now.
This is working for me.
Yes, that was working for me also. I think there is a problem in my system. I don't know why it's not working. So I'll just show you how we are supposed to do it, right? I think there is some problem in the Jupyter notebook, right? So we'll use, so I'll show you like this only that I have done just before. So we are using classify.fit function. So we are giving the arguments x train, y train, the batch size that we are supposed to give, and the number of epochs, that is 100. So I have trained this model on 100 epochs. You can see here that the accuracy started from 79 and it's slowly increasing from 79.71 to 79.77. Then we have 80.63, 82.81, right? It is increasing slowly. So you can see here now it is 83. Now it has been converging to 83 till here. And you can see now it has almost converged till 83. From here, it means the learning has now slowed down, right? And at the 29th epoch, it has gone up till 84. So if we see now at 35th epoch, we have 85 accuracy. Right now, it means the learning has slowed down, but it is still able to learn up to small number of features, right? And at around 53, we have achieved an 86% accuracy. That is starting from 79, we have achieved up till 86% accuracy. Now it has almost converged down to 86% accuracy, that it is staying between 85 to 86%, right? So you can see that at the end also we are getting 86% accuracy. It means our model has converged to 86% accuracy. Now, if we want to suppose increase this accuracy, what you can do is you can try different number of neurons in the hidden layer. You can try increasing number of hidden layers, right? You can try different methods and you can increase this accuracy also further. Now I told you that if I want, suppose intermediate results, right? So for that, I have to store it into a variable. So from that, I can get the history out of it. So we have to use a function history. So results dot history. Out of the history, what we want, here you can see we have two parameters. One is loss and one is accuracy. So I'm getting the accuracy out of it. So results dot history, inside it, I am giving the accuracy that I want. Now, if I print this accuracy, you can see we started from 79 and we have gone till 86. So you can see here, right? So if I plot this accuracy using the matplotlib library that we did that day, so for that, what we are going to do is plt.plot function we are using. So the accuracy, the variable that we have, and we are providing the x label as number of epochs, that how the accuracy is varying with the number of epochs, and y label is the accuracy, right? So if you see here, the accuracy started from 79 somewhat here, and it has increased with the number of epochs. And then after around 16 epochs, the learning rate has decreased. Now it is learning slowly, but it is still able to learn some of the things. After around 50 to 60, in between 50 to 60 epochs, it has reached this convergence state, and that is around 86% accuracy, right? Similarly, we can plot loss also. So from the history, I am taking out the loss. You can see that initially the loss was 0.48, then it decreased down to 0.39, 37, 34, up till we have our loss around 34, it has been converged. Similar to the way of accuracy, our loss also converges at the same time at which our accuracy converge, right? Because now the accuracy is not improving, we are not able to decrease our loss also, right? So I am plotting the loss here, and the x label as same number of epochs, and y label is a loss. So you can see here with the number of epochs, initially the loss was quite high, that is 0.48, and it started decreasing, and then it was almost constant in the midway around till 20th epoch. Then it has again started decreasing and converges to a point near 0.34, right? So this is a loss. We want this type of loss only, right? That was initially high in the beginning, and then it reduces down as it increases, right? As the number of epochs increases. Now we have fit our model. We have seen the training accuracies that it has get. We have seen the training loss that it has get. Now the next thing is we have to predict on the test data, right? So for that, like for example, for the fit, we use dot fit function. In the similar way, we use dot predict function to predict our data, to predict the results. So for that, what we are going to do here is we are using the classifier dot predict function. Like for example, we use the fit function. In the similar way, we use the predict function and we give the x training values to it. Now we are predicting the values. That is why we are not giving actual test values to it, right? In the fit function, you can see here, we are giving the actual y values also so that it can do training. Let me show you. Yes. Here you can see that it is while fitting the data, we are providing x training values also and y training values also. So, but in the prediction time, we do not require the actual y test values. We only require the x test values. So I'm using y predict here, classify.predict x test. Now you remember that in the output layer, we use a sigmoid function, right? So what sigmoid function does it gives us the probabilities of predicting, right? In the range of 0 to 1. That is how much probability is there that it belongs to one class, right? For example, it has 35% probability, 0.35 probability that it belongs to exited class, that is one class, right? Or zero class, whatever we are giving first. So based on these predictions now, but we want our answer to be in the form of 0 and 1, right? Here the answer is in the form of probabilities, but we actually want it in the form of zeros and ones. To do that, we can define a certain threshold, right? For example, here we have provided a threshold of 0.5. What it means is that if the probability is greater than 0.5, I should give that class certain value, like for example 1 or 0, right? If suppose I am giving, if it is greater than 0.5, then we should give false answer, that is the person has not exited the bank. And if it is less than 0.5, we are giving it a value of true, that is it. The person has, the person has not exited the bank, right? Not exited the bank, true here means 1 and false means a 0, right? So you can change this threshold accordingly. For example, if you give, for example, 0.6 threshold, you can give the results with more confidence, right? So it's up to you what threshold you want to define. I'm giving 50% if the results are greater than 50%. I'm really giving it as a yes. If the results are less than 50%, I'm giving it as a no, right? So you can define this threshold accordingly. So what I'm doing here is, if y prediction is greater than 0.5, then the value is this, right? So you can convert it into true or false. So remember, false here means 0 and true here means 1. 1 means the person has exited the bank, and false means 0, that person has not exited the bank. So based on that, we can plot the confusion matrix. So for that, we have a class in the matrix section from sklearn.matrix. We want to import which class? Confusion matrix that we want to plot. So for that, first of all, we'll give our original y values, that as we have given x test data. So the original y values will be y test, right? If we have given x train data, then here it would be y train. So you can also draw the confusion matrix of the training set also like this, right? So what mostly we do it for the testing set only. And y predict give us the predicted values that we have predicted. So we are giving the original values as well as the predicted values to the function confusion matrix, and we are plotting it here. So this gives us the true predicted class for 1 and true predicted class for 0. These are the wrongly predicted classes, right? So you know the true positive, true negative part. So it is working on that, right? So based on this, we can calculate various performance parameters out of the confusion matrix. The most commonly used confusion parameters that we use are accuracy, sensitivity, specificity, precision, and F1 score. Right? These are the most used 5 parameters. So I'm going to discuss that with you. So what is the accuracy? Accuracy is the correctly predicted values divided by the total number of values, right? So here the correctly predicted values are this 0, 0, this 1, 0, 0, this 1, 1. These two give us the correctly predicted classes, right? So we'll divide it by the total. So 0, 0, 0, 1, 1, 0, and 1, 1, right? We are taking just the values out of a matrix. And if we run this, we are getting around 85% accuracy. That is good enough accuracy, right? So we were getting around 86% accuracy on the training data, and we are getting around 85% accuracy on the test data. It means that our model is not overfitting, right? Our model is not much overfitting. It is giving similar accuracy as to training, right? So from accuracy, we can see that whether our model has been overfit or underfit, right? For example, if the accuracy would be very less, for example, the testing accuracy is around 50%. So we can easily say that our model has overfit because training accuracy was quite high and the testing accuracy was quite less. Similarly, suppose the testing accuracy comes out to be 90% or 95%, then we can say that our model has underfit the data. Right? Because why? Because the training accuracy is less and the testing accuracy that you are getting is more, right? So accuracy is a parameter that we can use to check whether our model has overfit or underfit, right? And the next thing we are using here is sensitivity and specificity. These two are used to predict the correct predictions of a particular class. For example, if I want to predict how many values are correctly predicted for class 1, and similarly, how many values are correctly predicted for class 0. So we can find out this using sensitivity and specificity, right? These are mostly used in case of unbalanced data set. For example, if your data set is not balanced, then you will have a high difference between sensitivity and specificity. Right, in this case, you can see that we have achieved only 55% sensitivity and 92% specificity. It means that our data set is unbalanced and we are not correctly able to predict the classes that were that were originally less, right? So we have to apply some of the data balancing techniques, or we'll try to decrease the difference between sensitivity and specificity, right? That is why sensitivity and specificity is important to calculate. And the last two is the precision and F1 score. And precision gives us the correctly particular predicted class with respect to total predictions of that class. For example, it will give us correctly predicted class 1 to the total correct prediction that has been done. So it is also important. And the last one is the F1 score. It gives us the harmonic mean between the sensitivity and specificity. Right? Why it is important? Suppose we use simple mean, right? And we get a sensitivity of 50% and a precision of 0%, right? So what it will give us is like 50 plus 0 divided by 100. It will give us the 50% of the result, right? But it is not a correct result. So harmonic mean is better way to estimate something as compared to general mean. For that, we have a formula 2 into precision into sensitivity divided by precision plus sensitivity. Now, in this case, if anything is 1 out of the 2, for example, precision was 0 and sensitivity is 50, we'll get our F1 score of 0, right? So it gives us better results as compared to better in the form of efficient, right? Better efficient results as compared to simple mean. That is why we use F1 score. So this was all for the feed-forward neural network. So if you have any doubt in this, you can ask. Any doubt?
What are epochs? What are epochs?
Epochs are like, for example, when you use stochastic gradient descent, what you do is you, in the first iteration, you get some of the results, right? Based on that results, you back propagate the error, right? And calculate the results again. That should improve, right? So the epoch tells us how many times that learning is to be performed. Okay.
Okay, ma'am. And what about sklearn?
sklearn is a library. It has various functionalities for it. I'm just using that library. Like, for example,
Okay,
there is NumPy library, Pandas library. Similar is the case with sklearn library. It has various pre-processing libraries, various fit function libraries, and various metrics libraries also. Right? We are just using it functionality. Anybody else having any other doubt? Yes, you can save your model also. The same command is there for which you can save your compiled model, but you have to run it again if you want some intermediate values. Okay? Yes.
Can you explain again the input and units? What are they? When you are adding the layers, the first hidden layer, second hidden layer, those parameters.
Here parameters.
Yes.
So input didn't give us the number of input neurons we want. The number of input neurons will be equal to the number of features, right? So we had here 12 features. That is why we are giving input dim as 12, right? And the second is the units is equal to 8. It means how many neurons we want in the hidden layer. So there is no particular value for which hidden neurons will work well. Like you can have 6, 8, 10, 12, any value. You have to try and check which gives you the better results, right? Kernel initializer, you don't need to worry about this. The next important thing is the activation function. You must have studied different activation functions that we use, right? So the activation functions which we use for hidden layer and the output layer is a rectified linear rule. So it is a name given to that, right? Rest all other are same.
Yes, thank you.
Any other doubt? So if you are not having doubt, I have shared the same Jupyter file with you also. So you can try that file and run it step by step. If you have any doubt in that, you can ask, or any other doubts you have.
Hello.
Yes.
Here accuracy is 85%. It means that among 100 data, 85 are accurate and 15 are not matching. No?
Yes.
It just mean. And then what does the sensitivity, specificity, and precision means in real world?
Like for example, if I give you some real life example, if I suppose I'm predicting some disease, whether the person has disease or not, right? So the sensitivity will tell you the true person who are having disease divided by the total number of persons that are predicted with the disease, right? So similar is the specificity. It will give you the healthy persons that are predicted as healthy and with other total, right? So why is it important is, for example, if suppose healthy person is given the result as patient, right? We can incur that loss. But suppose the patient is given as value as healthy, that the person was actually a patient and was predicted a healthy control. In that case, it would be a very big problem. Why? Because we are considering it a healthy person. We are not starting this medication. It would increase it. It may or may not increase the disease, right? So we always would want that in that case, it should get the highest number for all the patients being predicted as patients, right? So that is why these two are important. You got my point? Yes, I have shared the Jupyter file. Yes.
Ma'am, how can we make confusion matrix, or it just we can import it?
Just like I told you, we can just import the library confusion matrix from sklearn, and in that we give the correct values and the predicted values, right? And it will give us the confusion matrix. Or what you,
Okay,
if you
ma'am.
want to do it manually, what you can do is you can compare these two arrays and check out the true positives, true negatives, false positive, and false negative. And based on that, you can create yourself a confusion matrix, right? But this is the easier way. That one will take some time.
Okay, ma'am. Thank you, ma'am.
Okay. So if you still have any doubt or you are working on it, so you can start working on that. And if you are getting any doubt, you can ask in between. I'm here, present here, right? The error that I got, I think that is for the Jupyter file. If I will close the file again and run it, I think it will work. Let me see that, right? Please let me know if you have any doubt in between, right? Yes, I want to share with you one more thing, that I closed my Jupyter notebook and I rerun it and now it's working fine. So it was just some kernel issue, right? So you want to see that file or you are okay with it?
No, ma'am, we are okay with it.
So it was just a kernel issue. If you came across anything like that, just close your Jupyter notebook and relaunch it again in the local host, right? Sometimes the kernel gets stuck in between and it is not able to rewrite it, right?
Do we have any more doubts with anyone? I don't think there are more doubts, ma'am. So can we end the session now?
Yes, sure.
So thank you so much, ma'am.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone. And do submit your attendance within next 10 minutes.